What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
What is going on, OTB Nation? Welcome into episode number 328 of the award-nominated, honorably mentioned, number 9 NCAA ranked, and of course viewable on YouTube, Outside the Box podcast, the official lacrosse pod on the Underground Sports Philadelphia Podcast Network. It's KB and Deej coming at you post PLL Philly weekend. We got a lot to dive into from that. We've got just some general housekeeping news and notes to break down from our live show, which was awesome. Shout out to everybody that showed love at Villanova out there on the main line with the boys. And we also just have some fun topics to dive into on this episode that have just made their ways across the timeline in every which way, and I can't wait to talk about them because my brain has just been in a whole slew of thoughts in so many ways. But before we get into all of that, make sure you guys are following us on the socials across the board at OTB LaxPod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Threads. Check out Underground Sports Philadelphia on LinkedIn. I know I made an OTB page on LinkedIn that is supposed to be like a subset page of Underground Sports Philadelphia, but it doesn't let me tag the page in posts and everything, so I may have to delete that and just make a company page for OTB on LinkedIn as well. But if anybody out there listening is familiar with how that all works, let your boy know so that I can figure those things out for ourselves on LinkedIn. But you can follow Deej on Twitter at SCS_NextGreat. You can follow me at KBIZZL311. You can follow Chase at the PLL Pipeline. And you can follow Hoots at Hoots Sport Photography. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the pod. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Goes a long way for helping the show continue to grow. Helps more people find OTB and Underground Sports Philadelphia as a whole. And, of course, subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Underground Sports Philadelphia. That's where you get full video episodes of this show every week, full video episodes of every show on our network, clips, shorts, live streams, original video content. We're at 807 subscribers as of this recording. Let's get to 900. Let's go into the summer, full-on push for 1,000 or more subscribers. We are right there. Let's make that happen. And, of course, subscribe to the Outside the Box podcast YouTube channel as well, youtube.com/@OTB LaxPod. I believe that's where we're going to post OTB Live 2.0 on the OTB YouTube channel, and then we'll have clips going across both channels to kind of just get people tuned in. But I think we're going to post that on there so it doesn't mess up the loop of shows and everything. We are also going to post the audio of OTB Live 2.0 from Philly on the Outside the Box podcast RSS feed and on the Underground Sports Philadelphia RSS feed. So a little cross-pollination there so that we can get everybody listening to the live show. That was a wild success and a fantastic event, which we'll dive into in just a little bit. But Deej, what's poppin', brother, post-Philly weekend?
Dude, I'm back. I'm living. I took yesterday off of work, or I guess Wednesday, as a lot of people listen to this Friday, Saturday. It was nice kind of just to relax, and I actually did absolutely nothing. But just gearing up for a whole weekend of nothing. Thankfully, I'm coaching this weekend, so I still get my dose of lacrosse, but it's going to be weird not having any kind of lacrosse. I saw something about, no NCAA or PLL, but no NLL either. Like, this is the first weekend in forever that there has not been lacrosse on my TV or in my face in terms of college or pro. So that's a little weird, but I'm definitely ready to win another championship this weekend and get after it. So I'm in pretty good spirits, other than some stuff I'll dive into and recap about my Woods.
It is nice that this is a weekend where it's a bye week for the PLL, because it has been over a month since I've been at one of my happiest places on earth, and that is Citizens Bank Park, and I will be there both on Friday and Sunday. So it'd be nice to be able to kind of just like wind down and relax and be a fan at Citizens Bank Park on Friday and Sunday. Cole Hamels retirement night on Friday, which is going to be unbelievable. One of my childhood heroes, and was one of the driving forces behind me witnessing my first pro championship of a team I love. So that'll be a ton of fun. But yeah, it is going to be interesting with no PLL this weekend and seeing how the league wide bye week shakes out. But we are going to recap Philly. But before we do, got to give a shout out to our awesome partners over at Shootout For Soldiers, Deej. They had an event this past weekend as well, and they raised over $25,000 out there in Ohio. Big time turnout, big time, results from Shootout For Soldiers, Ohio. The all goalie game went down, and couldn't be more thrilled for them to kind of, kick off this full-fledged summer circuit that they have going with such a fantastic start to their season.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad for the Midwest to be a part, of the beginning and to show out so well. That makes me extremely happy. It continues to add to our case that we can pitch to the PLL to come to the area. And anytime that our partners do well is great, and specifically Shootout For Soldiers. Really like working, with Eric and Alexis, but also just their motto and what they stand for is amazing. So to see them kick off well means it can only get better. And when you have a great start, that momentum seems to carry. And even if it doesn't, having a good start allows you to have some leeway in other areas. So I'm really glad they got off to a great start. And I mean, the pictures that come out every time, the stories, the highlights, it's great. It seems like they have an amazing time. I still cannot wait to get out and play in one of these games.
Yeah, we now have a centralized space for all of the media content for us to start creating and telling a bunch of these stories that we're going to be working with Shootout For Soldiers alongside through social media, that I will be sharing with you, so that we both can kind of get our narrator voice on, be like the watcher from What If, be on our Jeffrey Wright grind. But shout out to,
I got more of a Morgan Freeman vibe to me, but
What If. But yeah, if you don't know about Shootout For Soldiers, their mission is to use lacrosse as a platform to support American veterans and foster community engagement. With over a decade of dedicated collaboration from local communities, lacrosse players, and the U.S. military, Shootout For Soldiers has emerged as a highly regarded industry partner, offering an unmissable and eagerly anticipated event. They have raised over $5 million to date. They've had over 7,500 attendees and over 2,500 plus players in their events. It has been awesome to watch from afar, starting off with this podcast, then in 2022 going to their Philly event at Episcopal Academy, which just looks like Hogwarts planted in Philadelphia, which is insane. And then to just see the way that this has evolved since 2012 as a high school project that Tyler Steinhardt, Brett Roberts, and RJ Kaminsky were a part of growing and creating has been awesome. And we are thrilled to be a part of their next chapter of storytelling, creating, and just pushing that message of lacrosse through and supporting the veterans that they do support. And obviously every single PLL weekend, there is a hero of the game, and we're going to be doing a lot of storytelling alongside them. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. But click the link in the description. Check out Shootout For Soldiers' schedule. I believe their next event is in July. I believe it's Long Island, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to pull it up right now so I don't sound stupid. Yes, Long Island is their next event, July 11th and 12th. And then they go on a big old stretch run. Canandaigua is July 27th and 28th. Virginia, August 3rd and 4th. Baltimore, September 7th and 8th. So definitely check out their events. If you're in those areas, register, go out, volunteer, sign your team up if you have the ability to do so. and check out Shootout For Soldiers. And shout out to them for being our incredible partners on this podcast. Deej Philly weekend was awesome, to say the least. It was one for the books, for sure. And I know we talked about it a bunch, with a slew of people, but it genuinely felt like a home game for the Waterdogs, and it was kind of the first time we've gotten that feeling in this new home market era of the PLL.
Yeah, I mean, it was a blast to be there and get to experience that rendition of a home game. I think the more home weekends we get to go to, we'll be able to compare them to each other. Like what we saw in Albany was a little bit different than what we saw in Philly. And it's going to be a little bit different than what we see in Maryland later this summer. So I like the small differences in, shouting out the nuances of each team and the branding, but then the fan interaction with each team is different. This is the first time I can say like the crowd matched the stadium as far as the branding. Like there were purple t-shirts and jerseys everywhere. Those rally towels were waving everywhere. There were "Let's Go Philly" chants. People erupted when the Waterdogs did something. You could tell people in the Philly area, whether they were Waterdog fans before that or not, had bought into the fact that the Philly team was there. They have a team that they can call their own in the PLL, and you could tell. They showed out in droves, which the stadium was packed all weekend, and they were loud about it, and they were there having a great time, even through the heat. So I think it really shows the potential of where these home markets can go, because I don't think Philly is going to be the only one like this. I think Maryland has a very good chance of turning out like this Philly one. I think Denver has a very good chance of turning out like Philly. It all just depends on how people feel in that moment and if they're free and available, which sometimes people aren't. A lot of people showed up and they were happy to be Waterdogs fans. Albany was a little bit different. There was still like a lot of like scattered fanship there. You could see a lot of different jerseys. There was a lot of different cheering. It wasn't really like Atlas. And I think part of that may have been Atlas's history in the PLL. It hadn't been great. So maybe people weren't hype enough yet into New York Atlas. And when we go back next year, it could be completely different and is a lot more New York Atlas-fied going into, next season. But for now, it was very spread out, whereas Philly, this is Waterdogs country. And if you're not a Waterdogs fan, get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, from the pop when Ryan Conrad scores that goal in the first game on Saturday to send the game to overtime, to the Waterdogs chants remixed from Eagles chants to be Waterdogs centric, to the K9 crew showing out in droves, tailgating with Michael Sauer's family, to, like you said, the plethora of dark purple, light purple, black and purple, white and purple across the board was a scene like we've seen no other at any PLL game. And it was really, really cool. And as somebody who is a Philadelphia sports fan, to see the people come out in droves to a place that isn't necessarily Philly, like Villanova's the main line. It's not exactly, the heart of Philadelphia. It's not down in South Philly at the stadium district. To see the turnout was fantastic. Like, I'd never been to Villanova either, which is probably a blemish on my Villanova basketball fandom to have never made my way up there, but I digress. Venue was awesome, to say the least. Like, perfect PLL venue. So much to do. The Premier Zone setup was flawless in terms of like location compared to where the stadium was. It was still in the grounds of the stadium, which was nice. The view was beautiful. Bar down was great. It was a perfect venue, and I hope that the Waterdogs are able to use Villanova as their stadium for years to come until the league finally has the means to build their own stadiums and own them. But it was a perfect venue. Like it was a little bit better in terms of just maneuverability and just overall accommodation, I think, than Ohio State was week 3 last year. Not that Ohio State was a poor location. You and I both really thought like it was a great venue for the league. But I think this was like a top tier venue for the PLL, and especially for one that they've never been to. They really made it like perfect across the board for everything that you can experience at a PLL weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the atmosphere is great, and I feel like everything was put in the right areas. Like, sometimes the Premier Zone, like, isn't an effective area, but, like, no matter which way you went in or out, it was, like, leading you right to a gate, so it was easy to get in and out and access it. The shop, for one of the first, like, times, was in a very good space that didn't clog up, but was also inside. Like, a lot of times it's put out in the Premier Zone to keep the clog out, but then when it is put in the arena, it isn't, like, in a space that's, like, good where you can, like, watch the game and, like, interact with people and still, like, shop. Perfect spot for it in Villanova. You could do all of those things. There were multiple concession stands, and you were able to kinda go to one that was most leisure for you, and Bar Down was back, like, everything.
Great concession selection too.
Yeah,
Like it was very like Philly concessions. It wasn't generic. You know, you had
yeah,
your shout out, no free shout outs. You had your Chickies and Pete's crab fries. You had your Philly pretzel factory pretzels. Like that was a nice touch too. That I
yeah.
think flies under the radar for the traditional Philly fan because we're used to having that. But if you're going to a PLL weekend for the first time, like it made it feel Philly.
And I think that's a huge part, and I don't know, like, kinda how they're doing in other spaces because, like, I don't know too much about upstate New York and, like, what you're looking to eat there, but I would imagine kinda Albany concessions are what you're expecting there because 'cause they're there all the time, but that's a big part of it, like, you want certain things when you're in a certain area or a certain city, and they did a great job of pulling Philly into Villanova and dropping that there so everybody could really have a great experience. So I'm just kind of excited to see how this continues to flourish in other areas.
Yeah. And I mean, the games were electric. It was unfortunate that the Waterdogs were not able to get at least one win on their homecoming weekend. You know, a lot of chatter, a lot of banter coming out of the weekend across the board for a number of teams. But the weekend went like this. Cannons, Zach Tucci. I see him in my nightmares. Cannons win 12-11 in overtime against the Waterdogs. The Archers get a 9-7 win over the Chaos. Barn burner of a game to start Sunday. The Atlas win 20-15 over the Redwoods. And then overtime, just as he does, living in my head rent free, the boy, Matt Rambo, wins it in overtime for the Maryland Whipsnakes over the Waterdogs 15-14. Biggest discussion coming out of Philly is the Waterdogs' lack of a face-off athlete. We obviously have talked about it ad nauseum on this show. We talked about it during the live show, which we'll recap in a moment. But Alex Thakis, if you don't know, or you think it's a publicity stunt or whatever, he was finishing his master's degree at the University of Denver. Denver is a trimester school, and if you're a Philly area person, to liken it, it's what Drexel does. Drexel's also like they're on trimesters, not semesters. Deej and I and Chase, we talked about it on the live show. Was it silly for them to not bring in another face-off guy to training camp to kind of just have, you know, the notes on somebody else just in case? Sure. But it feels like if they decide to go with a face-off guy, it's going to be Stathakis or bust. That's not the biggest issue with the Waterdogs right now. Is it an issue potentially if things continue to transpire? Maybe, but
You
right now the
you can
biggest issue is they can't defend the two.
Oh, that's not an issue. That if that's anybody's issue, it's Dylan's. He's just got to
For
save
sure.
it. Like that isn't on the defense. Maybe you could press out a little farther, maybe, but realistically, that's 15 yards out. I know these are the greatest hitters ever, but you're the greatest goalies ever. You should be saving that. I trust my high school goalie to save from 15.
I'm saying, like, part of defending the two is Dylan Ward's job.
I mean, it's just Dylan Ward. Like, I don't even mean, like, I never really throw things at goalies or never really throw things at one specific person, but this is a Dylan Ward thing. I think the defense is playing fine. Your middies are
100%.
fine. Your offense is great. I think the only actual problem is maybe Dylan not saving twos, but realistically, the faceoff is the problem, but it's not a problem per se. It's just the fact that they don't have one. You sign Alec Tastakis, this whole thing goes away. This whole thing goes away. And you don't have any problems as Waterdogs fans. So I think everybody needs to just take one big, deep breath and look at the large picture like Tierney's been telling everybody to do and realize this team is – all they have to do is sign Stathakis, things are done. It's over. This team starts to win games. I think Dylan Ward settles in a little bit. I think the team is a little less tired because they're playing a little more offense than they are defense. It's a domino effect of things that will fall into line once they get the faceoff thing figured out, which isn't even not figured out because they're not losing that many faceoffs. And when they are, they're not giving up that many goals off of those possessions. So it's not a big deal.
I think the biggest thing from this is it's getting overblown, number one, because they're the only team that doesn't have one. So it's easy for the general public to just like laser in on that and be like, haha, look what you're doing. You're costing yourself this, that, and the third. When I say defending the two, it is on Dylan Ward's shoulders. Like, he's given up 3 2-pointers this year that have cost the Waterdogs games. You take away those 2-pointers in the game against the Archers, the game against the Cannons that Tucci hits with 3 seconds to go until halftime, and you take away one of the 2-pointers that Chaney hits, that's a 3-0 Waterdogs team. You know, that flips the score completely, especially that Cannons game where it felt like the entire just like momentum of the game flipped as soon as Tucci hit that, because instead of going into halftime down 1, you're now down 3 and you have a bigger hole to dig yourself out of. And on top of that, the Waterdogs shot selections from 2 have not landed. Connor Kelly is the renowned 2-bomb king, has not had the best start to the season in terms of just shooting percentage. Jack Hanna's been out. He's another 2-point threat for you. And Jake Caraway hasn't hit any deep shots per se. And at least in the game on Sunday, that looked more like the Jake Caraway we all know than he has in the first 2 games. They just need to have better shot selection and not have to like put all their eggs in the basket of it's Michael Sowers and Kieran McCardle or bust. Like, everyone around them also has to step up and perform at the level that they know they're capable of performing at. And this will figure itself out. And like Michael Sowers said on Sunday, this team started 0-3 in 2022 and ended up winning a championship.
I think everybody is playing to their potential. Honestly, I don't think anybody's playing. No one on the Waterdogs is playing bad, except maybe Dylan Ward. Like, seriously, when you look at the production levels across the years, everybody's pretty on par with where they've been in the past. And honestly, I think Sowers and Kieran McCardle have stepped it up one notch, which makes it seem like everybody else is playing bad. Not that they shouldn't step it up a notch with them, but they're still playing as good as they have been. It's just a matter of this league has gotten better. So they just have to step up to that. It's not that they're not playing well. It's you get a couple saves, maybe you win a couple more faceoffs. Like, they're in a position of that where it's a couple more of these, a couple more of this, and things are different. Not we need to like really do a deep dive and like figure out what's going on with this guy and this guy and this guy and fix this, this, and this. It's let's just grind a little harder. Like, that's literally.
There's one guy. There's one guy that I'd like to see more from because we know he's capable of doing it, and it's kind of, for lack of a better term, it's weird that it hasn't happened because he's familiar with Bill Tierney and Dylan Sheridan. That's Ethan Walker. He's been pretty quiet to start the year. He's only got 4 points on the year.
But I'll say he's a huge emphasis if you like listen to coach, which I've been doing a lot better of this year, is actually listening to coaches and doing some reading between the lines and deciphering things, a huge emphasis this offseason was off-ball defense. So guys like Chris Gray, guys like Ethan Walker, guys like Matt Rambo haven't been getting the space they've been getting before because off-ball is so key. The only team that's doing well in off-ball movement is the Atlas because, well, I don't know what to say. They just know how to do it. Nobody else is doing it at the level that they're doing it, so that's why they're seeing the success that nobody else is. But off-ball was huge in the offseason, and you can tell in the way that they're shutting down certain guys, which I think Ethan Walker just isn't getting the space that he's gotten in the past to create for himself or just get open hands to shoot, which has completely changed not only his game and the way he's attacking it, but just his output. I think he's kind of become more one of those players that understands he's there and is being used more as a decoy for the time being until defenses start to relax on him a little bit. He's just being extremely patient, in my opinion. He knows eventually defenses are going to start sliding a little bit quicker to Michael Sowers, Kieran McCardle, or Connor Kelly is going to wake up and teams are going to have to double pull the midfielders, something like that to where his opportunities will come. So I would be patient on Ethan Walker because I feel like if there was a real problem, Bill Tierney would have addressed it already, or like it would have come up in more pressers to where Bill Tierney would have to say something, and it just hasn't yet.
I also don't think just from because there's been so many other things that have just like overshadowed, the general discussion in those press conferences where people want to try to poke and prod at Bill Tierney and he's not going to give in about, the face-offs and other things. Nobody's really just like given an opportunity to ask about it, but I am curious. I would like to hear what he has to say about Ethan and how much he thinks now that Jack Hanna's going to be back in Minnesota, how much that's going to help his game, because those two we know are, thick as thieves and a dynamic duo together. So it's going to be interesting once Jack's back to see how that helps Ethan as well. But I do think my biggest takeaway from the Waterdogs is on Sunday, Bill Tierney kind of putting a big portion of the blame on himself. He said, this team's the same. The only thing that's different is me. And that's, something I've got to fix and correct. And I think that's, for somebody of his stature and somebody of his accomplishments at the collegiate level, him stepping into the pro game for the first time, for him to acknowledge that after a frustrating weekend like that, to where you lose 2 games in overtime and you're one play away from flipping the script on your season this early, I think that's big of him. And I think that shows you the level of trust he has in the locker room and the level of trust the locker room has in him.
I think everybody in that locker room is going to say that. Like, that's just like when you're at pro sports, everybody thinks it's their fault. Like, to me, that's a very coach answer. Like, eventually you have to say it's your fault. And Bill gives a lot of coach answers. Nothing wrong with coach answers. I think he's going to do the same thing when Hannah comes back. You ask about, if that helped Ethan Walker at all, he's going to go, I mean, yeah, Ethan and Jack play together all the time. So, they have that chemistry and they, did well for me at Denver. Blah. He's a coach answer guy because it keeps his players safe. It keeps him safe. It keeps secrets. I get it. And he's old school. Like, he grew up in an era of coach talk where you just don't let anything go in the pressers and stuff. So I'm not surprised to hear him say it. Is it kind of what you want to hear and what you expect? Like, yeah, but like, it's also like coach talk to me. Like, that's why I said I've been trying to like read between the lines. And like, what I got from that was Copeland would have gotten a face-off guy by now, and this may not have happened, but I'm not Copeland, so I'm not doing that because this is what I want to do, and this is how it's shaking out. Like, that's kind of what I got from his answer of like, this one's on me. It's like, okay, he's thinking that he's not making enough decisions GM wise to have the right team on the field to succeed. Because as a coach, once you put them on the field, a lot of your job is done. You might have to make a few adjustments as to what's going on out there, but a lot of your job is done. It comes down to the players and how hard they work out there. And he knows that. I don't have to tell him that. So it's like really one of those situations where he's like, okay, I'm not doing my job and putting the right 10 people on the field plus the extra 9 I have on the bench. I'm not putting out the right 19 come game day.
Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see because I talked about this. We had Waterdogs beat writer Wyatt Miller on Underground Sports Philadelphia, and he and I kind of talked about it too, where, and Nat brought this up in his post-game press conference where the Redwoods had bye week, game, and now they have another bye week where they haven't really been able to get that momentum going like we've seen every team have in years past where you're just playing every weekend. How it's kind of, it'll be interesting to watch it shape out with the Redwoods, the Waterdogs, and the Outlaws in particular, because they are the ones with those early season buys. And, it sucks that the Outlaws, after that, momentous win on the back of Brennan O'Neill in Carolina, now don't play lacrosse for 2 weeks as a team. So that's something to also just keep in mind in terms of just getting that game flow going and playing. And it's different than any other sport where PLL, NLL, you're practicing once a week with these guys in person, and then the rest of it is kind of just doing the work on your own. So seeing how that shakes out for the early go is going to be not a major thing to watch, but it's something to keep in your back pocket while you're watching those 3 teams in particular. DJ, I know you have a lot to say on the Redwoods, so floor is yours.
Dog. I've been seeing all of the power rankings and people talking about the league and how they see things shaking out and the standings. And I want to be upset about the California Redwoods being at the bottom of every list and every set of standings I've seen. But I can't be. I just can't. Why? Because they absolutely deserve to be there. They're 0-2. Lost to 2 teams that I don't think they should have lost to. Granted, the one was by human error, but then again, if you don't let it be in a case where human error can make any type of significant, impact, that won't matter. And once again, the real problem with this Redwoods team is it's stagnant. The ball dies in so many different sticks. But what I will say is I asked this question to Coach Nat over the weekend in Philly about, how he feels about the offense going stagnant and it dying in sticks and what is the approach to getting the ball fluently moving around on a regular to find more opportunities like they had in the first quarter where they were up 5-1. His response was, sometimes it's tough because all these guys are playmakers. When you look at their college careers, they're the go-to guy on their team. When their team needs a bucket, who are they calling on? These guys? And they're supposed to just go make a play, whatever that is. So in turn, when this Redwood team needs a bucket, every guy thinks it's his turn to go get a bucket. So they're trying to do everything they can to get this play to spark the team, and therefore they get tunnel vision and don't use each other. I get it, but when is it going to crack? Where is Rob Pinnell? Where is Ryder Garnsey? Where is Westberg and Charlie Bertrand telling these guys it doesn't work that way? We've been doing it that way for 3, 4, 5 years, and we haven't done anything since year 1 where we went to the championship. And if you look at that year 1 team, it wasn't dying in that many sticks, and that's why they were successful. But now, here we are. Year, 6? 5. Year 5.
No,
year 6, yeah. Year 5 season.
Year 5 of a regular season.
Yeah. And it's still the same thing. Nobody's teaching these young guys that, hey, we have to move our bodies. We have to move the ball. We have to stay active. Big littles work. Bouncers work. Nobody's dropping the nuggets so that this team can be successful. John Grant Jr., Where are you telling this team to stop letting it die in their sticks? Where are you coming up with drills or drawing up plays that forces this offense to move and forces them to move the ball? Sometimes you got to add a little wrinkle in as a coach, and that is where this team is. Somebody has to make the change that gets everybody on the field to realize they got to use each other more than they have been, because it is absolutely ruining this team.
Can I bring up some pretty wild stats so far with this team that it is kind of gross, and it is a testament to your point. And I also think it's just like their shot selection has been terrible to start the year in a lot of instances. But can you guess the 3 players on this team who have a shooting percentage that's 35% or higher?
Degnan
shooting 36.4%. So that is one.
Westberg
is shooting 100%.
And Charlie
Bertrand is shooting 27.3%.
That's honestly probably a little higher than I thought. I'm trying to think of guys who haven't been shooting a ton.
Be on the right track there.
Kirsty?
Cole Kirst is shooting 12.5%.
We're not going to talk about that at all. I know it's not Romar because he hasn't scored yet this year.
Nope, Romar's shooting 0%.
Nakai hasn't scored yet this year.
0% as well.
It can't be Rob.
Rob is shooting 33.3%, so just right under that 35% threshold.
And it can't be Ryder.
Ryder's shooting 18.8%.
Yeah. Who else is in that midfield? Give me just a second. Chris Gray.
Chris Gray is shooting 50% in one game.
Yeah.
It's Chris Gray, it's Westberg, and Garrett Degnan that are all shooting above 35%. That's bad. I get Ryder is shifty and, wants to try to make the hero shot, but him shooting 18.8% is rough. Rob's right under the threshold that I listed for the cap there, 33.3%. Charlie's at 27.3%. Kersey at 12.5% is bad. Nakai is off to a rough start this season, to put it lightly. And Romar's played in one of your games, and it doesn't have a single shot. He's got 16 touches on the year. That's tough. Alex Simmons hasn't played. He's been on the protected roster. Ryan Lee hasn't played. But when your overall team shooting percentage is 27%, and you have effectively 3 guys who even have a registered shooting percentage that are right there or below, and then you have multiple guys at 0% that you were coming into this season expecting them to take that step forward, like a Nakai, like a Cole Kirst. It's not great. And I get it's 2 games, but there's expectations for a lot of these guys to not have this team relying on Rob Pennell, Ryder Garnsey, and Westberg to be the entirety of the offense.
That's not okay. People are not gonna like really what I got going here, but changes have to be made. This one's directly to you, Nat. Love you, homie. We're tight. Down low at attack, you gotta have Chris, Ryder, and Rob. And I think you turn your midi lines into two-man lines, and you just run a Restberg out of the box right to the crease every time, and then you just pair 2 middies with him. I think that's the best way to, one, have a plethora of options on the outside that can dodge and get you shots, but still have that inside presence that forces the defense to think. Because Westberg is one of those guys where you can't leave. I think sometimes some guys go on the inside and teams are a little more reluctant to slide from those guys and are faster sliding from those guys than they are from Westberg. So I think you try that first, and you really just got to get guys moving the ball around. Something we used to do in college was the offensive guys had to get 60 and 60. And I think that's huge, just whipping the ball around and not, it was on skeleton. There's no defense in the area. It's just the offense set up, moving around and whipping the ball around. I think that's huge. If you can get 60 passes in 60 seconds, it helps you, one, really lock in and realize how fast the ball moves and that it moves faster than you do. And then it really gets you realizing the different, sight patterns and passing lanes that are there when you're moving and when you're not moving. So those are just a couple pieces I have in terms of that. But the big thing is this Redwoods team is not far from glory. The defense is great. Jack Kelly is still playing out of his mind. And when you got TD doing what he did last week, a couple people are talking about it, but let's be real here. Trevor Baptiste is far and away the best face-off man in the league. He just won MVP not too long ago for absolutely running the stripe. He's been running everybody this year, if anybody hasn't seen, by the way. And Trevor, he showed up. It wasn't like he wasn't there. He wasn't a pedestrian or a mannequin or a traffic cone. He was there working hard, tying up, doing his best, and TD was running him at the stripe. A dude who was coming in at the year almost 80% got ran by TD. If you got TD doing that and the offense figures it out, the whole league better be on watch because this team's going to get good real fast.
I'm not taking away from what TD did, but do we ever find out what happened to Trevor? Because he did get injured or hurt at some point.
From what I'm understanding, it was from the hit to the head that he took during the face-off. I think he's going to be fine. I think it was more of a precaution, like, hey, we're winning this game. They're not really doing well. We can throw, Peyton Ruzanka, Danny Logan, whatever out there, and they can do okay against TD, and we'll have the defensive there. And we'll rather have you for later, which I think is a great move for Atlas. Look at them. They're 4-0. Do you really want to lose one of the most important parts of the team and one of the reasons why you are 4-0? I don't think so. So that's huge to me.
The other two teams that played this weekend that we haven't touched on yet, the Whipsnakes, still some questions, but they answered some for me this weekend against the Waterdogs. Obviously, it helps when you have the third perfect game in franchise history go down for you, and you're getting possessions from a guy like Joe Nardella, who looked as healthy as he has in quite some time, and very, very happy to see Joe Nardella back to form and being his traditional self. And congrats to the boy. A perfect game is nothing to sneeze at. I don't care who you're throwing out there. That's commendable for sure. 31 for 31 at the stripe for Joe Nardella. Just the fourth perfect game in PLL history, from what Chase and I researched. 3 of them coming from the Whipsnakes organization. The other is the aforementioned TD Erlin last year against the Cannons. The Whips still have some questions. They're still missing quite a few pieces on that team. But I think the biggest takeaway as I pull up the stats from the weekend, they finally were like, oh yeah, let's put the ball in Matt Rambo's stick. Let's put the ball in Zed Williams' stick and see what they can do when they have possession. And TJ Malone still continues to look like an absolute beast.
I'm going to say, I know people are like overly critical of the whole like Rambo Williams thing, but like once again, actually paying attention to on field and like reading in between lines of coaches, they weren't sure that TJ Malone could get it done. Coaches were like, other coaches were like, what does this kid have? Like, is he going to be like other rookies who get into the PLL and are not ready? Like, so they were effectively shutting off Zed and Rambo and forcing TJ Malone to make the plays. So it's not that the Whip Snakes were going away from Rambo and Zed and didn't want to get him touches. And I understand they were frustrated, but that was probably because they were more so frustrated probably at TJ, but obviously couldn't take it out on TJ. So they get into situations with Stags and other players where it's like Matt will bounce out and will get a glimpse of freeness, and he wants the ball in that moment because he hasn't been touching it. TJ doesn't give it to him. Now he's frustrated, which, like, I get TJ doesn't want to make a mistake. He doesn't want to turn it over. So that isn't enough space for him to throw a pass. He doesn't do it. Like, it was a weird situation for their offense to be in. I think the Waterdogs were the first time that they got a true upfront presentation of defense where they were allowing them to pass to Zed and Rambo, and they were allowing Zed and Rambo to dodge and make a difference in the game. Whereas other teams were like, look, if you're going to beat us down in attack, it's going to be that rookie that's got to prove himself versus two MVPs who have done this year in and year out. It makes perfect sense. But now that you know TJ Malone can do it, which is where I think the Waterdogs are coming from as well, is these are three very capable attackmen down here. We can't really just give TJ Malone space to do what he wants. We have to attack these other matchups as well, which I think is what allowed that space. So it's more of TJ Malone did what he was supposed to, which finally opened it up for the rest of the offense to come alive, rather than the rest of the offense wasn't there and they were okay with that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Waterdogs defensively like did a great job on Zed Williams. Like, to put it in perspective, the 2-point goal was the difference from Zed, but that was the only shot Zed made, and he shot 11.1% this weekend, Deej. That's your game defining thing right there, is Dylan Ward's inability to stop the two early this season. You let an MVP caliber guy kind of just be out there and you let him take shots. He shot 9 times. He doesn't make that 2-pointer. He goes 0 in shooting percentage this weekend. He only touched the ball 19 times. He had 1 ground ball, 5 shots on goal. Like, that's damn good defense. And I think something that is going to fly under the radar, and we talk about it a ton, is just because they're defensive guys. Ben Randall was fucking brilliant this weekend. He had the matchup, the physical matchups of Asher Nolting, and I'm pretty sure he was on Zed in that Whip Snakes game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the matchup he had as well. Ben Randall, All-Star voting is open now. If you're not voting for Ben Randall to be in the All-Star game, what are we doing? He's been fantastic this year and has just elevated his game to another level on this Waterdogs defense. And that was one of the most impressive outings I've seen from Ben Randall in quite some time. He deserves all the flowers from the weekend he had because he contained Asher Nolting and Zed Williams brilliantly.
Yeah, I mean, I always said that their defense played well, and they've been playing well. And I don't think you can say too much about the individual efforts without bringing up Marcus Hudgens, which I think was absolutely phenomenal in his debut this weekend. Did great. He already had 6 GBs and 5 caused turnovers. Like, in 2 games, dude was ready to play.
3rd round pick too, by the way.
And I think that was kind of lost in the sauce of the losses and the stuff with the face-off and offense. And he played very well this weekend and deserves his props as much as, Ben Randall and who else is down there with him?
Liam Burns.
Liam Burns. Yeah, as much as, those guys are down there making their impact, him coming in and fitting into their system flawlessly and playing as well as he did, I think is a big reason why these were still 1-goal games.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Sabia in week 1, you knew what you were getting in him. He's been in the league for a few years. Hudgens was a question mark, and they threw him out there and he was ready to go. And I think that's a huge part of who the Waterdogs are and how they continue to be. You got to fit in and be able to do your dues when it's your time. And he absolutely stepped up to the call.
The other thing from this Whip Snakes game is Dylan Ward didn't know how to defend Matt Dunn.
That's
what the fuck, man?
That's the big thing here.
Matt Dunn scored his first 2 goals of his PLL career, first goal since 2017. And you also let Colin Squires, the boy, who has a do not pass go, do not collect $200 stop sign from the entire Whip Snakes coaching staff, score the first goal of the game. And if you want to talk about a juice goal to kick off a game, it's Colin Squires scoring. Shout out to the boy, outwit, outplay, outlast, Mr. Survivor himself, 39 days.
Let's go, big dog.
That was kind of just like, oh shit. Because didn't Colin score in Ohio last year too? And it was just like, oh,
and we went through the same thing in the presser where we heard that he's not allowed to shoot. And once again, he's shooting.
One shot.
Yes, Colin, we all know as Poles, when we're not allowed to shoot, the one thing we do when we have an opportunity to shoot. So yes, you keep doing that, big dog. Keep shooting until they really tell you can't.
And then the other game was very low scoring, very gritty type of game, was that Archer's Chaos game. I don't know if you saw Jack Rowlett apologize to STX on the Instagram post for breaking his stick.
He only saying sorry because he wants them to send him a new one. he ain't mad for real. He did that on purpose. He is not sorry. No, I love
the game.
We've all been there, dog. We've all been there.
Shout out to your boy, my boy as well. Nick Rowlett, to put it lightly, deuced up on Mike Sis.
Hey,
what a performance.
Continuing the ball. He played well in his homecoming and down in North Carolina, and then once again against Sis, a lot of people were like, Sis is that guy, and Sis did all right, but man, Nick he's found his groove. He reminds me a lot of first year TD. First year TD came in and was just this fast, speedy guy that you couldn't beat and was like in and out in a laser. And that's what Nick is doing right now. He's in and he's out. Ball's out. He's gone. Chaos is on offense, and you're still looking for the ball. And I just love the way he's playing. He's bringing that grit that he had at Michigan, and he's continuing to be a hardo. So, as always, I support my Michigan guys, and will continue. So, keep it up, Nick, and you'll find yourself on a few more of my fantasy teams.
And let's not put it lightly. We've said this about guys in the past too, who like made their pro debuts in the PLL and then decided to play box. Like Nick Rowlett played a majority of the winter and into the spring with the Philadelphia Wings. I think that helps. It allows him to see different guys and kind of, add different elements to his game. And I think we're witnessing that a bit. And his ability to just continue evolving his game from last year to this year, it can't be understated. Like, he's been fantastic to start the year for them.
Absolutely great. And I think it's only going to continue to elevate their offense once, like, you really look at who they got down there, which I hope they keep Ross Scott down there with Jules and Josh. Hello. We're talking goals off that 32 like no other, especially if they're going to continue putting Perk on the wing, who's been great. And then obviously CJ Costabile or Troy Ray. We're talking 3 people off the wings that could stay on offense. That's insane. And you're good to go. So if he's able to keep this up, we could talk about Chaos being one of the better 32-second offenses. It's so weird to say we have like a 32-second offense versus a 52. Like, Chaos could be one of those really good 32-second offenses. I think that's where the Archers and Atlas have made a lot of their living this year so far, as being a very good 32-second offense. And you know what? Denver's creeping in that category too, especially if you look at what they had going at the in that comeback game against the Archers. a lot of make it take it with Luke Weirman. And if he keeps playing the way he is, Denver is going to be a problem pretty soon.
Yeah, and it was a tough loss for Chaos this weekend, but like I think Andy Towers summed it up perfectly. Like their defense was great. You only allowed 9 goals against the defending champs, and he said you allow 9 goals to a team, it's a game you should win. And it was just kind of their offensive shot selection was off, and everyone has an off game, and to keep it as close as it was like that, and to see Blaze Reardon bounce back from that injury as quickly as he has was incredibly impressive. He was great in cage for them, and this Chaos team is going to be fun to watch. Like they are very entertaining start to finish, no matter where they are on the field. They have one of the best defensive units in the league. They have one of the top 5 offensive players, however you want to stack him up, in Josh Byrne. I think the pieces around him this year are great. Not that they haven't been in the past, but it is a different look for him as compared to having his traditional boys around him. And they're just going to be a ton of fun to watch all year long. So they're not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think the Archers were just as impressive in that game. And guess what, Deej? They're going to get even more fun because guess who's coming off the holdout list when the league comes off their bye week in Minnesota? Oh, that's right. The Cyborg's back. Welcome back, Graham Hossick.
Yeah, and we get a lot of other names. Big ones being Peyton Cormier and Jake Stevens. We finally get to decide what this Atlas offense or Atlas team is not only going to do with their 25-man roster, but their game day roster and their starting lineup. A lot of questions are going to start swirling about that team, but the biggest question is, do they change anything? You're 4-0. Do you touch a thing?
It's going to be interesting.
You leave it how it is. Because if you touch something and it goes bad, do you try and go back? But what if when you go back, it doesn't work? Touching something could completely change and derail this entire season. But not touching it makes people poke a lot of questions at you too. So I think this is a very interesting situation for Coach Pressler and the New York Atlas. So that's something to keep an eye on. But the Cyborg being back is huge, I think, for the Archers.
It's kind of a surprise, too, because nobody knew why he was out.
Whoa. Yo. Who's running LSM right now for the Archers? It's I know it's Troy Hettinger and
well, they released Troy to
okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Who was the other one that was taking reps with him?
Is it our guy?
Bars? That's what I thought.
No, John Robbins.
That's right. But John Robbins wasn't on the roster a couple weeks ago. Or maybe the thing is,
John's been there.
The thing is, it's going to be interesting because one of these guys is not going to be on the game day roster between Cam Wires, Kobe Bars, and John Robbins.
I think John Robbins will be on the roster because Chris Bates waxes poetically about him.
He does.
I think Cam Wires has earned his spot.
Yeah, but I think
he has played.
I think he's going to end up being in the LSM rotation. Because
yeah, I agree. I think that's where you
can't move Warren Jeffrey. He's a staple of your close D. You're putting Graham back in, no questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Mason Woodward is more of a defenseman than an LSM.
Agreed.
Which naturally moves Cam Wires to LSM. So
Patrick Trume is out right now, so that also alleviates like a roster spot due to injury. So
right.
And obviously we want Pat to be okay, but that obviously gives you a little flexibility on the 25 man.
Mm-hmm. So everybody should be on the 25. It'll just be interesting to see who makes the 19.
Because they also had an open roster spot.
Yeah,
or they had 2 open roster spots going into this past weekend, and now Dyson's back off the unavailable to travel list, and Graham is back, and they released Troy Hettinger. So,
I forgot about him. Yeah, so him getting into the roster as well. Like a lot of guys making their way. Levi Anderson's going to be coming into Waterdogs team, or not Waterdogs,
Whipsnakes.
Whipsnake team. So he's going to bolster their midfield as well. The Canadians coming in is going to be a huge deal.
Yeah. Jonathan Tonville's back as well for the Cannons. That's huge for them.
Donnie.
And I think one other move got made too. The Waterdogs released Alex Mazzone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's to bring Chris Sabia back because Tierney said that he's going to be back from Minnesota. It wasn't a long-term injury. So,
well, he said he's hoping. I don't know. That's what he said.
Listen to Underground Sports Philadelphia with myself and Wyatt Miller, and it sounds like Chris Sabia's back.
No, I'm telling you from what he said to us directly. He was like, he should be back. His words were should, but he doesn't know. So it's a maybe. I think more so
later in the week
he let Alex Mazzone. I think he let Alex Mazzone go because he's not going to play Alex Mazzone. And once Chris is back, he's putting Chris right back into rotation of things. So that is more of what I think that is. Don't bank on seeing Chris in Minnesota, but if he's a good to go, I would say that we do see him in Minnesota.
I also think the bye week being in between helps.
It does help a lot.
Improve those odds.
100%. But don't be surprised to not see him is all I'm saying. It's not a for sure right now. We will know once we hear that he's back from the what they put him on PUP or just IR.
Let me check. Follow the PLL pipeline on Instagram.
Facts.
Chris was put on. I don't know. We didn't post about it. It's probably PUP because it was an injury that happened during a PLL game because he got hurt in Albany.
Mm-hmm.
Also, before we recap OTB Live, I was scrolling through my 2021 PLL cards down here. This is one of those things that like it doesn't feel like it actually happened, but it did. Doesn't Charlie Hayes feel like he has just been a career PLL career water dog?
No, he's not.
He's not. And I totally forgot that he
I can't remember what team he played for, but
played on the Whipsnakes for 1 year.
Okay.
I saw his card on the Whipsnakes and I was like, what the hell? And then I went and looked at his bio today and I was like, I genuinely don't remember him playing in a Whipsnakes uniform or who they traded him for because that was pre-PLL free agency.
Mm-hmm.
I totally forget who that. I'll have to look that up, but pulling it up here. Where is Chris Sabia? Yeah, so Chris Sabia is just listed as out. So probably PUP. So should be back soon, which will be nice. And just the depth that the Waterdogs have defensively. AJ Mercurio was placed on the PUP list too, so who knows when we'll see him or Kenny Brower, but Marcus Hudgens has proved that he can hold it down and be a huge part of that defense overall. But before we recap, Philly, your standings, Eastern Conference wise, New York Atlas at the top. They are 4-0 with a 19 score differential in the positives, 71 scores for. The Cannons 2-1 with a -2 score differential. The Whipsnakes 1-2 with a -7 score differential. And the Waterdogs 0-3 with a -3 score differential. Your Western Conference, the Utah Archers are in first place at 2-1 with a +2 score differential. Carolina Chaos have the most scores for in the West with 47, but they're 2-2 with a +1 score differential. The Outlaws 1-1 with a -4 score differential. And the California Redwoods 0-2 with a -6 score differential. Philly, we had our live show, Deej. We ran it back. And before we recap it, just want to talk to you guys, let you know about our OTB app code in the PLL app. We use the app nonstop. We were on that thing all weekend, collecting all the XP, leveling up like crazy. It is
boy about to
truly
get MVP soon.
It is a godsend, that app. From just up to the minute information on your favorite teams, favorite players, time changes for start times for games, flexes, PLL fantasy. Join the OTB fantasy group. There's just so much in the app, and it's gamified. So there's ways to earn XP. Leveling up in the app unlocks different, milestones and everything for you. It unlocks different switch abilities on your profile, and sometimes you get nice little discounts in the PLL shop. But download the PLL app in the App Store, Google Play Store, or go to pll.app. And when you go to the redeem code section, use code OTBPOD, OTBPOD, for 500 XP on your account. That's pll.app, or download it in the App Store, Google Play Store, and use code OTBPOD in the redeem code section for 500 XP on your account. Deej, we did our live show, and must I say, it was 100,000 billion trillion times better than our first go round in Ohio.
Yes, it was so much better this time around. I had an amazing time. I had an amazing time the first time, but there were just logistical and technical issues that sent us to the haywire. But this was a huge improvement, and I felt like gained a lot of traction, not only for us, but for the PLL and just people that were there. Like it was just an all-encompassing event that worked out for everybody involved.
And I think just location-wise, off rip, was so much better than Ohio, and that's no slight to what it was in Ohio or the PLL. It was just circumstance. We were kind of plopped somewhere that wasn't like truly ideal, and it didn't help that the Premier Zone got kind of flooded and turned into a mud pit the night before. So that wasn't great overall. But man, the Premier Zone location at Villanova was pristine. The show went great. No guests on OTB Live 2.0, but that's fine. Things happen. Players weren't available. That's cool. It's cool. Just run it back on the next one. Location was great. Shout out, no free shout outs to ECD for letting us use their generator to have power to make things happen. And people knew who we were, which was kind of weird in a cool sense. People yelling OTB as we're recording, people stopping and scanning our QR code on our sign. That was cool to kind of just see the evolution of that, where, last year in Ohio, we had one dad and his son kind of chilling and watching, and we had Josh Byrne and RJ on the show, and nobody was coming by. This time we had a bunch of people walking by, and I think that had to do with the location, obviously. But it was really cool. It was a ton of fun, and I can't wait to do it again, which we're in talks to potentially be doing it again this year. So I got to subscribe. The support from you guys allows us to do this kind of stuff. And it was really neat. It was really cool to have a live show like in my backyard of sports fandom as well. And shout out to everybody that walked by, showed love, popped out, has subscribed since. And OTB Live will be viewable this time on YouTube. It'll be on your podcast app of choice sometime next week, early next week. So you'll get a double dip of OTB in your podcast feeds and on your YouTube feeds. But yeah, it was a ton of fun. And also shout out to CFO Margie, crutches and all, came through, ran the cameras. It is such a help when you have somebody running a camera for you. You don't understand. She came through, was loving every minute, even though she was on crutches. She is since off the crutches now. But yeah, it was a ton of fun, and can't wait for the next one. And also big shout out to our guy. He is an honorable member of OTB moving forward. That is Evan Sales. came through as a photographer for us for the games and the live show. If you're not following him, his socials will be linked in the description. Shout out to Dana Jackson and Kyle Jackson for linking us up with him as well. His photos, bro. We have not had a photographer for OTB since 2019 with our GOAT, Alex McIntyre. It is so dope having somebody capturing the games and capturing a live event for you. The photos are just they have left me speechless, and I have sent a multitude of them to a number of our guys that he captured. So I'm still sifting through a bunch to make sure there's enough to send to guys of certain players, but we're helping our guy out and getting his name out there because he deserves it. His work is unbelievable.
I mean, he caught some amazing flicks of your boy. So, I mean, yeah, I definitely got to shout him out. I'm definitely going to post some of those and tag you, Evan. But seriously, thanks for popping out this weekend. It was dope to meet you. Dope to have you out there shooting flicks. OTB. The pod was great, and seeing the people interacting with us as they were walking by, and just the people that didn't say a word to us but kind of just stopped and listened for a while. That kind of stuff means a lot. It just shows that people care about the few things that are spewing out of my mouth every so often. So yeah, thanks for the support, and I'm excited to get back at it again sometime. And dude, I love it, man. Lacrosse is so amazing in bringing people together. And I'm just happy to be a part of that and to be able to do it in person. And it was cool seeing kind of some parents like, oh, do you listen to this? And like some kids going, yeah. And some kids going, no. And then like stopping for a second and kind of trying to figure out if we were worth the vibe or not. And for the most part, it seems like we were.
We're always worth the damn vibe. God damn it.
Facts.
Yeah, it was so sick. And like the you don't realize until you're doing it, and like I've gotten a chance to do it with the main pod and this show now, like doing a show live, you guys don't understand the difference that goes into it, and just like how you kind of have to curate the content, where like when we're doing this weekly, we know what we're going to talk about to a degree. We workshop some topics and all that. When you're doing it live and games are still going on and you want to talk about everything, but not everything has come to fruition yet, it's way harder, and you got to kind of work on the fly. That's why we were pointing out all the different jerseys and everything, which I think was a fun little wrinkle to the live show. But it was fun, and I think the dynamic was great because that was the first time we've really done a 3-man pod in years. You know, it's been since Harrison was on the show with us as well, since we've done a 3-man pod, and our first like 3-man pod live, which was like, okay, let's see how this works. And I thought we flowed perfectly, and it just went to show that like bringing Chase on board was the right move.
Yeah, it just means Chase knows how to hop into us because we already have that. We had that mojo.
Years worth of.
We didn't even need the years worth. That first call, the mojo was there. We were vibing and good to go. And he was kind of the same way. This is the first time we've actually like, kind of had been able to like sit down and like really talk to him like with just us, because I think the only other time was during the draft stream, which we have like 10 people on, and that's just a mess in its own. So yeah, it was really nice to kind of have him there and see him integrate into our flow so well. It won't be the only time he's going to be on, so it's nice to know we can bring him on and be able to just bang things out in our flow with no real changes. He's definitely the man. Once again, if you are not following the PLL pipeline,
what are you doing?
Medias, you are doing this lacrosse thing wrong.
And it's nice because like when it's more than one other person with you, like there can be a tendency to step on somebody's words and like interrupt, and there was none of that, which was that in and of itself was impressive, I think, for all three of us, where like we didn't have to worry about who was talking when to interject and all that kind of like. It was perfect. Like it was like a pinball machine, almost like just bouncing off the bumpers of a pinball machine, and it just flowed perfectly. It was truly a modern marvel of podcasting, if you will.
I just came up with an idea. You know how you got like the multiplayer air hockey?
Mm-hmm.
They need to do multiplayer pong. Because that's what was coming to my head, like with our conversation. Like it was just like a 4-player pong where like anytime it hit, it was just somebody else picking it up and just knocking it to the next guy. Like boom, boom, boom. The ball never really stopped moving.
Yeah, it
But
was
that
awesome.
can make some money out of Dave and Buster's. I mean, not for me anymore. I know what I'm playing, but
Run me that coin dozer.
ASAP.
When we eventually have an HQ, I told DJ this and I told Stephen McAvoy this. We will have a coin dozer machine.
Yes.
Will we get any work done? Absolutely
No.
not.
I'm
But
here.
will we be running tables on coin dozer? Yes.
Run me my money. I hit the jackpot.
So many times.
That was so sick.
Yeah, Dave and Buster's, if you want to sponsor us, please.
I played other games, but
please.
Coin dozer.
Don't even get me started on skee ball.
You know I've been a hooper my whole life. So.
Come through, Dave and Buster's. Next topic, though, yeah, but like I said, OTB Live will be on the Outside the Box podcast YouTube channel in video form, and then on both OTB and Underground Sports Philadelphia podcast feeds within the next couple of days. So definitely stay tuned for that. DJ would have helped to know when we were in Philly that both Mike and Paul were not going to be there. I went back and retroactively listened to the most recent one-on-ones, and right at the beginning of the episode, they both were like, yeah, we're not going to be there. And Mike was like, I'm not in Philly, and it's killing me. First things first, congrats to Mike and his lovely wife. They are expecting, as of this recording, baby number 2. Mike's already a phenomenal dad, and I know baby number 2 is going to be just as loved as baby number 1, and it's really cool watching Mike be in dad mode via his Instagram stories and his Instagram posts. He's one hell of a dad, and to be able to juggle that along with all of his duties with the PLL and being a CEO is no tall task. So big shout out and big love to Mike and his lovely wife as they expect baby number 2 any day now. And our guy Paul Rabel is carrying the Olympic torch and is at the Cannes Lion Creatives Festival in France, which they said, Deej, I don't know if you were able to tune into the most recent one, but they said last year when they were at Cannes, that's how Whirlpool came into the fold and how they got Whirlpool on board as a partner. So they are working those relationships there, as Cannes Lion is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, creative festival in the world every single year. And Paul also got to hang out with some of the coolest athletes and carry the Olympic torch in France, which is pretty fucking cool. And as an Olympic nerd myself, I was like, it was like, whoa, my worlds are colliding.
I just think it's cool. The inclusion lacrosse is getting, that's huge in getting us into the 28 Olympics and keeping us around and garnering that interest around the world is to have one of the biggest names right now at the forefront, carrying the torch, doing work, while he's out. They don't stop. Paul and Mike don't stop. And I think that's what lacrosse has really missed in trying to get things where we all want them to be, is a fearless leader or a handful of them that will not stop. It isn't, okay, we've done this, and this, let's chill for a bit before we go. No, it is the next move all the time with Mike and Paul and trying to grow the game and enforcing it not only here but across the world, which I think is huge. So I'm really excited for the Olympics. I absolutely love the Olympics. It's a time for just to enjoy sports for what they are, just the pure definition of competition, but also I love the way things always come back to just camaraderie. At the end of the day, people shake hands, they congratulate each other, they hug, and they move on because they understand they're just representing their country and their sport at the highest level, which is an honor in itself. Everybody there is honored to be there. I think it's huge. It just gives us a kind of just a minute to step back and go like, wow, look at what we get to do. So I love the Olympics, love that lacrosse is going to be involved soon. And then obviously, Mike, my guy, you're an amazing father. Excited to see you get at it for a second time now. And I was telling you, I was like, I think these babies are planned, man. Like, bro got to work in the first 5 years of the PLL and was like, all right, now that that's established, let's knock these things out so I can get back to it. Like, but also it makes sense because like his kids now are going to be able to see the work he puts in, gets to see the league grow, and if they are to take it over at some point, they know all the hard work. They've seen the ins and outs. Like they're going to be ready for that position. They're not kind of going to just be thrown into it because their dad passed and they inherited the company. Like they know what's going on. I think it was very smart by him, but hey, man's is on a schedule.
Before I give my last piece on that, I do have a little bit of breaking news, Deej, in the NBA world. I know you're a hoop head. I don't know if you just saw it.
Bro, the hoops news over the last couple days has me bugging. First off, why the Pistons firing Troy Weaver when they could have just fired Monty in the beginning since you was going to do that anyway? Troy Weaver was doing great as a GM, and you just threw him out the door. And then JJ Redick goes to the Lakers. I'm telling you, they're going to be up there recording podcasts during practice. And then
setting the precedent.
And then why? What are the Bulls doing? Josh Giddey not going to do nothing for you?
More like Josh Giddey, am I right?
Is that what you were about to bring up? That man? I don't even want to talk about that.
Well, the fact that Alex Caruso is now going to get to play with SGA is crazy.
Hey, they going to cook next year. Again, them Thunder are going to be somebody to watch out for.
But yeah, shout out to Mike and Paul just continuing to make moves. And I was just thinking this because we have so many people that work for us that are like invested in the. Should we do an Olympics podcast?
Sir, what'd you say?
Should we do like a company Olympics podcast?
What's up?
Or like
assign me a couple sports. I'm locked in. I want.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I can't take swimming because that's you.
That's me and Christian.
I
mean, we could. I mean, swimming.
You can give me basketball for sure. I need that. Oh, I need track too. I need track. That is like. I can't live without Olympics every 4 years. I need them track veins going.
Dude, you know what? One of the most fun sports to watch in the Summer Olympics is, because they get fucking heated, is beach volleyball.
I was just about to say beach
so much fun.
Hard. Are they bringing back speed walking this year?
No, I think it got replaced by breakdancing.
Because listen, bro, I saw speed walking when it was in the dog. They were moving. I could be an announcer for speed walking. Put me on some color commentary talking about how they be speed walking around their neighborhood and their neighbors always get mad. Yeah, I could vibe with that.
Here's the sports for 2024. Archery, artistic gymnastics, artistic swimming, athletics, which I think is track and field.
Yeah, it should be.
Badminton, basketball 3-on-3, beach volleyball, boxing, breakdancing, which is just called breaking, canoe slalom. That's gonna be fucking
hello
sick. Canoe sprint, cycling BMX freestyle, cycling BMX racing.
I need both them.
Cycling mountain bike, cycling road and cycling track, diving also electric, equestrian, fencing, flag football's in this year.
Wait, have you ever seen fencing?
Oh yeah,
bro, fencing's hype.
Crazy.
Fencing's hype.
Flag football's in this year, I think. No, I'm sorry, that's
a 28er as well. I think flag football's a 28er as well.
Football in here is soccer. Golf, handball, hockey, judo, marathon swimming, modern pentathlon, rhythmic gymnastics, rowing, rugby sevens, sailing, shooting, skateboarding, sport climbing, surfing, swimming, table tennis. That's also fucking amazing. Taekwondo. Oh my god, it's the best.
You know I need that.
Dog.
You know I need that. Don't even play.
Taekwondo, tennis, trampoline, triathlon, volleyball, water polo. Amazing.
Water polo's hype too.
Water polo, underrated, some of the most athletic humans on earth.
Yes.
The core strength that you need to play water polo at that level is insane. Weightlifting and wrestling.
Weightlifting's probably gonna go hype too. Hey, I'm that weirdo that watches like CrossFit on TV, bro. Yeah. I will watch people do. Yeah, bro, that stuff's or like, bro, I was infatuated with World's Strongest Man competition growing up. I was like, yeah,
My
bro.
boy is a fan of the mountain.
I was like, this is what being a man's about. You go out and
like the dude that's like the face of World Strong, like the Thor Bjornsson guy. He was in Game of Thrones.
I did not know that.
He's the guy that's his name in Game of Thrones is the Mountain.
Because, bro, like that was just the epitome of man to me. You pick up heavy, large objects and then scream about it after.
I pick things up and put them down.
Ah!
Get to the chopper.
Neighbor.
Dude, imagine we start like an Olympics podcast, like podcast feed, and it's just like me, you, Steve, Christian.
I'm down.
And then it's like we do it for the Olympics, but then it's every 4 years. And
Yes.
it just comes back. And then we just spike the charts.
I'm here for it.
It'd
That's
be
what I
electric.
need.
Last bit here. It is brought to you by our pals over at Tomahawk Shades, the best small batch eyewear in the game. From sunglasses to blue light glasses, prescription lenses, they got you covered. Deej and I wear Tomahawk Shade sunglasses when we're out and about traveling. Deej wears them when he's coaching. I'm wearing the blue light glasses all the time when I'm home to protect my eyes from those violent blue rays coming out of your screens. They also have prescription lenses available. Two of the co-owners, Chris Hogan, Kyle Harrison, ever heard of them? Go to tomahawkshades.com, or you can download the Tomahawk Shades app in the App Store or Google Play Store. And when you go to checkout, use our code USP. You get 25% off your order from our friends at Tomahawk Shades. That's tomahawkshades.com, or download the Tomahawk Shades app in the App Store, Google Play Store, and use code USP for 25% off your order from our pals over at Tomahawk Shades. Deej, we got to talk about these Summer Box Lacrosse headlines because golly gee, my boy. Golly gee. You want to wonder why Mike and Paul are saying that these dudes can't play Summer Box and PLL at the same time? Because, man, some of these headlines coming out are making Summer Box Lacrosse look so amateur, it's not even funny. And I get it's an amateur league already, but my goodness, is it looking amateur this week?
I just don't know. It's obviously not the MSL that has this problem. So, like, the MSL's fine. But, yeah.
Outside of their team logos, those are bad.
We're not going to talk about that. That's fine. We can get over that. That is something that you can look at and say, okay, your logo sucks.
I look at that and I say, brother, ew.
Yeah, but how's your on-field product? Okay. Does it make me go, brother, ew? Then it's fine.
Outside of Six Nations the Peterborough Lakers, it does.
That's a good ew. But this is a bad ew. Like, I don't like seeing headlines.
How does this happen?
Being stripped of wins.
How does this happen 12 games into a season?
Okay, I can read you what LaxMag has said. So after last night's 13-7 win over Kitchener-Waterloo Lacrosse Club, the Beaches led the OJLL with a perfect 12-0 record, which has now been reduced to 4-8 as a result of the OLA's decision to subtract results as part of the disciplinary measures. That's wins over St. Catharines twice, Burlington twice, Peterborough once, Six Nations, Brampton, and Orangeville all once as well. Those have been overturned. The opposition is obtaining 2 points for each of those games. The association has deemed the team to have broken a player eligibility rule, not just once, but multiple times this season when adding players to their roster, primarily from Toronto's Ontario Junior B Lacrosse League affiliate, the Nepean Knights. Teams are permitted a total of three direct releases within a single season, and the Beaches have most certainly surpassed that sum. Toronto's first 8 games of the season included these illegally used players. Losing 16 points drops Toronto from being far and away first in the OJLL to now near the bottom of the standings. They say that there are still 8 regular season games, so they should easily make this year's playoffs, and Toronto does have the right to appeal the OLA's decision. Now, what rule did they break? That's Rule 6.35A, which states any player rostered by a lower category club, including U22, but excluding U17 ages or lower, when released by the club, may be rostered to a higher category club without releases needed by any other junior clubs closer to their releasing category club. Such player movement will be known as direct releases, and each club within the corporation will be allowed 3 players to be rostered each year by means of direct releases. Direct releases only affect the movement of players to a higher category club. Players residing in junior centers may not be released under this section without the consent of their junior team in their municipality. The direct releases appear to include the following players: Liam Aston from Nepean, Tyler Francis Renner from Cambridge, Thomas Kiziak, Connor Knock, Isaac Wills, and Owen Wills, all from Nepean. And although Nepean's Hunter Lubinecki is listed on the OJBLL's official website as a 2024 direct release, he was in fact released a year ago and suited up 9 times for Toronto during the 2023 OJLL season. As a result, the Beats has retained his rights this year, and Lubinecki avoids being lumped into the lengthy list above. Francis Renner, Kiziak, and Owen Wills are the team's first 3 direct releases this season. Will be able to continue playing for the Beaches this season, as that will be Liam Aston and Isaac Wills will be allowed to return to the Knights for the remainder of their 2024 season. Knox status seems less straightforward and appears to be the individual mentioned in the OJL's announcement as the player who was not properly rostered to an OLA team prior to this season. Knock will not be permitted to play in the OLA this year, but could potentially be available to a team in the British Columbia Junior A Lacrosse League or Rocky Mountain Lacrosse League in Alberta or Saskatchewan.
Messy, messy, messy. I'm not talking Lionel. Dude, like, number one, the team has to know what they're doing to a degree. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
To be doing all of this. Number 2, how does the league not realize this is going on until 12 games into the year? We are advocates for people playing lacrosse at any level, however they can get a stick in their hand. That is obviously something we both and Chase and Hoots want. But when stuff like this happens, it makes it so difficult to take these leagues seriously. And that sucks. You know, it feels Bush League. It feels so poorly, like, just executed, and it really highlights the word amateur in this sense. I saw that headline pop up, and I saw our guy Christian Del Bianco quote tweeting with hilarious gifs about everything going on, and it just blows my mind that these teams think that they can just, like, get away with this type of shit because it's amateur, and you're just showcasing why you're an amateur hour and why nobody wants to take you seriously. I've talked to people who are in Canada, and they've even said, like, the viewing experience, half the time there's no stream, half the time it's impossible to find the stream, and on the other hand, it's not an enjoyable product in person. Like, that sucks. And I don't know what the ramifications outside of obviously the forfeiting of wins and losses here are. I feel like there should be more to this because you're trying to beat the system. You're trying to, for all intents and purposes, you're cheating. There should be a harsher penalty than just saying, 8 of your games are now losses. I think there needs to be some big time ramifications for this. I don't care that you're amateur. I don't care what the deal is. You're trying to game a system and take advantage of, people having, their eyes closed to a situation. That's not cool. And it just takes away from your product and makes people not take you seriously in any sense.
Yeah, it's just insane. Like, these kind of things did this.
It's laughable.
It is. Like, I didn't want to laugh, but like, there's literally nothing else to say about it, because like, this just, imagine the NBA doing this, or even the PLL or the NLL doing this. Like, these things don't.
If this happened in the PLL, the profile picture meme that our guy Joe Keegan tweets out, those people would be in an uproar.
They're like, oh my God, we wouldn't hear the end of it. We wouldn't hear the end of it. So it's just like, you can't come at us when things like this are happening. Like, do we want to see this happen? No, because we support all levels and types of lacrosse, because we just love lacrosse. But this is a horrible look for the league and for the sport. This stuff has to be cleaned up. And this isn't the first time stuff like this has happened with the OLA, or even the OJLLA, like OJLL. There are so many different of those, problems within those smaller leagues, which I get. Logistics and everything are harder to deal with at those levels, but you got to clean it up somewhere.
Yeah. It's bad. Also, I want to pull this up from the other day because this was kind of scary. The fact that the Six Nations game between them and the Oakville Rock was postponed due to a serious injury. And there was no stream for the game, so nobody knew what was going on unless you were there. That's terrifying, and very happy that Callum Jones is doing okay from what the reports are. He's recovering at home, which I think is a huge thing, but that's terrifying. And again, the people who are always crying and whining about guys not having the ability to play Summer Box and PLL at the same time, this is a major reason why. You never want to see anybody get hurt. And Callum Jones is an unbelievably talented player, and we're happy that he's okay. But if a guy gets hurt playing Summer Box, there's a liability issue to where, not saying they would, but somebody could say, hey, this started when I was playing in a PLL game, and it just happened to get worse while I'm playing Summer Box. There's a reason the NHL doesn't allow players to play in their amateur leagues during the summer. There's a reason that you don't see guys in the NBA going back and playing, overseas.
Oh no,
it's international competition.
They're all playing in pro-ams.
That too.
That's why, which is dumb. The NBA is not a good example.
Yeah.
At all.
But from an organized league perspective.
Use any other organized league. The NBA is an awful example.
You don't see summer football leagues like the UFL having guys.
Or the AF7L and 7 on, like, all these other football leagues that exist. They're for people who are still trying to make it to the NFL or couldn't make it and are like, I just need to play football. Yeah, like, they're not for professionals to stay in shape. There are so many other ways to stay in shape other than putting yourself in danger by playing in a sport. Like, as much as we want to put it, when you're that much capital to a league like guys are to the PLL right now, you are putting yourself in danger when you go and play a sport. even if you're just playing pickup basketball at LA Fitness, you are in danger of hurting your career as a player if you get hurt. That is how the PLL is looking at this. They don't want their guys going into a league that doesn't have everything fully put together and possibly getting hurt. Makes sense. And you see it in other leagues outside of the NBA.
It's how you take the sport from being amateur hour to being viewed as a professional sport.
Yep.
Also want to give big shout out because it was announced this week on Part of My Take that he is moving on from Part of My Take to pursue his broadcasting career full-fledged, and he'll be on a PLL sideline in Boston and for the All-Star game. Shout out to Jake Marsh. He is genuinely one of the nicest, coolest, down-to-earth people I've gotten a chance to meet. Met him on Long Island a couple of years ago as he was like prepping to go in the booth for the first time in the PLL, and does a phenomenal job on the broadcast that he's on with the PLL, does a great job with the golf broadcasts he's been a part of, the Barstool live events that he has been a part of, whether it was the bowl games for the Arizona Bowl, the college basketball invitationals that Barstool has had. Jake Marsh is a second to none talent, and whoever decides to hire Jake Marsh to allow him to pursue this dream he has of being a full-time play-by-play broadcaster is getting somebody who is going to make your company infinitely better.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Jake and what he's got coming up. He's done an amazing job with the PLL and many of the other places he's been, absolutely killing it. So I don't expect that to stop anytime soon. The man is an absolute grind. And I'm just, really excited and happy for the things he's done to help the lacrosse game.
So without any further ado, guys, this has been another episode of OTB.
Hold on. Portal Jones is going to pop out because Inside Lacrosse has started their 2024 tracker for the year, so we can be very accurate moving forward. I guess we'll just go incoming transfers. They do have an outgoing transfers as well, and I'll skip over any of the outgoing transfers that I've already mentioned during incoming transfers, as they have where they're going under the outgoing transfers. But I did it that way because there are some incoming guys from D2 and D3 that will not be on the outgoing list because the outgoing list is D1 only. So Rocco Moreno, from faceoff guy from Townsend's, going to Albany. Sage Dorito, a goalie from Franklin and Marshall. Richie Reed, a midi from St. John's. Brian Russell, an attackman from Merrimack. And Nick Vance, a midi from Denison, all going to Bryant. Sam Burns, a midi from Ohio State, is going to Boston University. Jeff Douglas, a D guy from Yersenius, is going to Canisius. Thomas Power, an attackman from Colorado College, and William Stahl, a midi from Holy Cross, are going to Dartmouth. Corey Capri, a midi from Yale, and Jack Colby, a midi from Merrimack, going to Delaware. Judge Murphy, what a fucking name. An attackman from St. Lawrence, going to Denver. Aiden Blake, a midi from Cornell. Graham Blake, a attackman from Harvard. Chris Cusalito, a midi from Providence. Luke Graham, an attackman from Richmond. Eric Molliver, an attackman from Maryland. And Paul Wethington, a short stick D-mid from Princeton, all making their way to Duke. KJ Delane, an attackman from Merrimack, and Luke Fisher, an attackman from Denison, are going to Fairfield. Fulton Bayman, an attackman from Notre Dame, and Jack Erb, a short stick D-mid from Siena, are going to Georgetown. Jeb Brenfleck, an attackman from Penn State, is going to High Point. Jonathan Singer, a goalie from Ursinus, going to Hofstra. Jacksonville is going to get Drew Kesnich, a midi from Detroit Mercy. Parker year ago, one of those, midi from Cleveland State, and Dom Zingo, a D from Lynchburg. Luke Stott, a goalie from Loyola. John McKee, a faceoff from Dickinson. Jack Monfort, a midi from Yale, and Patrick Hackler, a midi from Yale, going to John Hopkins. Tom Vaughn, an attackman from Cabrini, going to Lemoyne. Benjamin Schuster, a midi from Mount St. Mary's, going to LIU. Vinny Trujillo. I'm going to ask him how to say that. Short stick D-mid from Syracuse, going to Loyola. Jack Casey, a D from Army, and Chandler Castor, a face-off from Hofstra, going to Marquette. Noah Armitage, a midi from Stony Brook. Jack Dowd, a midi from Salisbury. Bryce Ford, an attackman from Fairfield. Zach Gorno, a short stick D mid from Bowdoin. Matt Keegan, an attackman from Binghamton. AJ Hernandez, a D from Navy. And Luca Ward, an attackman from Holy Cross, all going to Maryland. Pace Billings, an LSM from Princeton. Will Byrne, an attackman from Bowdoin. Jackson Clay, a midi from High Point. DJ Dixon, a midi from Wesleyan. And Lucas Stanot, an attack/midi from Princeton, all making their way to the Mitten State in good old Ann Arbor, wearing that maize and blue, becoming victors for the University of Michigan. Mount St. Mary's is going to pick up Nathan Committee, a D from Bellarmine, and Jack Smith, an attackman from Randolph-Macon. Dylan Sebastian, attackman from Hofstra, is going to NJIT. Nick Dupius, an attackman from Stony Brook. Michael Gianfrancaro, a goalie from Princeton. Andrew O'Barry, midi from Harvard. Drew Scott, midi from TCU football. And Spencer Wortham, a midi from Cornell, going to North Carolina. Greg Campisi, an LSM from Harvard. And Drew Winocker, midi from Denver, going to Notre Dame. Mason Bregman, an attackman from UMass. Ryan Donnery, a midi from Quinnipiac. And Shane O'Leary, a midi from UMass, going to O State. Chris Patterson, attackman from Hobart. Jack Omini, a midi from Rutgers. Chris Patterson, attackman from Hobart, is going to Penn. Jack Onemy, a midi from Rutgers, is going to Penn State. Dan Donahue, a goalie from Union, is going to Providence. Ethan Gillenhall, a midi from Bucknell. And Brooks Ryan, a D from Richmond. Okay, I don't know why a D from Richmond is transferring to Richmond, but all right. Ethan Bernard, a faceoff from Boyden. Joseph Junekirks, a short stick D mid from Princeton. Casey Mongillo, a midi from Merrimack, going to Rutgers. Matt Pepe, an attackman from Bryant. your guy Michael Grace, LSM from the attackman from Bryant, Matt, is going to Sacred Heart. Your guy Michael Grace, LSM RIT, and Riker Ochoa, I think it's Ochoa, short stick D mid from St. John's, going to Syracuse. Max Koopman, a D from Bellarmine, going to St. John's. Jack Crosby, LSM, going to Rutgers. Colin Riley, a midi from North Carolina. Ethan Lindsay, an attackman from Army, all going to Stony Brook. Gavin Begonia. Gavin Begonia, midi from Ohio State, going to UMass. Villanova, Brett is going to get Brett Malley, a D from Yale, and Tyler Sandoval, a faceoff from Princeton. Charles Balsamo, attackman and midi from Duke. Johnny Hackett, attackman and midi from Bryant, going to Virginia, which is wrapping up our outgoing transfers. Matt Torrey, a goalie, is going to Colby out of Air Force. Mana Wilhelm, a midi, is outgoing from Air Force. Outgoing from Army, Owen Button, an attackman. Charles Brody, a midi. Ryan DeRocco, an attackman. Michael Katz, an attackman. Brooks Stankovaj, an attackman. Braden Stroh, a midi. Out of Bellarmine, Jackson Hammersley, a midi. Out of Boston U, Nathan Laquius and Colin Kruger. Laquius and LSM, Kruger an attackman. Brown is going to lose Colin Hart, a D guy, and Connor Thoralt, a goalie, who's going to transfer to Tampa. Tegan Alexander, coming out of Bryant, is going to be a goalie, going to Endicott. Bucknell is going to lose Brett Callahan, a midi. Patrick Sakura, a midi. Braden Coyle, a faceoff guy. Dutch Furlong, an attackman. And David Wellen, a D guy. Canisius losing Theo Breton, a midi. Colin Delo, a faceoff. Riley Jenkins, midi. Thomas Reuter, midi. Owen Tichenny, faceoff. Cleveland State loses Chris Anderson, a midi. Cole Pollard, an attackman. Parker Yergo, a midi. I thought I said his name earlier. Maybe I did. Colgate is going to lose Hugh Carlin, a face-off guy. Drexel is going to lose Jackson Bishop, a D guy, and Carter Begley, an attackman. Denver's losing Nick Catino, a goalie. Charlie Ciardulo, a face-off guy. Gavin Dallas, a midi. John Totaro, a face-off guy. And Grayson Vorgang, an attackman. Logan Flattery is going to leave Detroit Mercy. He's a midi face-off. Joseph Schmaltz leaving. He's a D. Aiden Snow, a midi. And Sawyer Van Antwerp, an attackman / midi. Fairfield is losing Casey Rollini, an attackman. James Krieg, a midi. Hampton's losing David Sadasviam and Kai Talley. Sadasviam's the goalie, and Talley is an attackman / midi. Talley's going to Newberry. Harvard is losing Andrew DeGennaro, who's a midi. Liam Griffiths, who's an attackman. High Point losing Macon Bullock, a D guy. John Luke Dooley, a midi. Miles Harvey, a midi. Bobby Keene, a midi. Damian Raimondo, an attackman. Duncan Ryder, a midi. William Russler, a midi. Corey O'Connor, a D guy. Hobart, Liam Daly, a goalie. Zachary Delaney, a midi. Jack Fiola, a goalie. James Green, a midi. Nicky Gullis, a short stick D mid. Lucas Soteropoulos, ain't no way I said that right. A goalie. Anthony Stillwell, an attackman. Hofstra loses Griffin Turner, a midi, and Jimmy Van Meter, a goalie, going to Colorado College. Holy Cross, Dawson Friars, a goalie. Miles Jackson, a D. Jordan Naso, face off to Tampa. Timothy O'Callahan, a midi. Jacksonville loses Curtis Goddard, a midi. Daniel May, an attackman. Seamus McCloskey, a D. Quentin Pellegrino, a D. And Liam Wheeler, a midi. John Hopkins loses Colton Marquise, an attackman. Lehigh, Nick Torini, short stick D mid. Lemoyne, Liam Burns, an attackman to Cortland. Sam Carey, a midi. Jagger Kerr, a D. Michael LeCoucher, a midi. And Ian Leahy, a short stick D mid to Janiso. Loyola losing David Lindsay, an attackman midi to Tampa. Danny Scott, a midi. Manhattan, Eric Hennessy, an attackman, a midi. And Michael Schaefer, a D. Maris is Vincent Budrico, an attackman. Marquette, Jamie Grant, a goalie. JP Henry, an attackman. Jack Kinney, a D. Luke Rios, a face-off guy. Maryland, Ryan Falkstein. Owen Murphy, or Falkstein's a midi. Owen Murphy's an attackman / midi. Caden Onagi, an attackman / midi. Mercer, Riley Knox, attackman. Aiden Laughlin, a goalie. Thomas Strong, a midi. Merrimack, Casey Barnes, D. Reed Bednar, D. Brian Bowman, attackman / midi. Zane Coda, goalie. Ryan Cole, D. John Conley, D. Trace Hogan, midi. Roy Keverline, midi. Michael Klopfer, midi. John McIntyre, attackman / midi. Keegan Palmer, D. Brian Russell, attackman / midi. Connor Stacks, a face-off. Luke Zulik is an attackman / midi. And Brendan Wyka, a midi. Michigan losing Ryan Sullivan, an attackman. Monmouth, Gregory Clark, D. Alex Benedictus? Yes, Alex Benedictus, attackman. Cameron Stovall, D. Mount St. Mary's, Klaus Anger, face-off. Nicholas Bellardo, LSM. Ben Bradley, midi. Grant Cotello, a D to Tampa. Chase Cavalier, Mitchell Dunham, William Klein, Hank Leonard. Chase Cavalier's a midi. Dunham's a D. Klein's an attackman. Leonard's a goalie. Owen Peters, a goalie. Jackson Phillips, a D. Jack Pila, an attackman. Ian Plott, an attackman. Brendan Rigoni, a D. And Benjamin Schuster, a midi, going to LIU. AJ Hernandez, a D to Maryland from Navy. I said that already. Tanner Ham out of NJIT, a midi to UIndy. Nathan Paulo, an attackman. Steve, it's back. Pep is a face-off guy, leaving NJIT. Out of Notre Dame, Andrew Greenspan, a face-off guy. Ohio State, Aiden Bodani, Matthew Caputo, and Keaton Zavitz. Midi, Caputo's an attackman. Bodandi is a D. Penn State losing Ben Spinelli. Princeton, Thomas Brands, midi. And Teddy Gutman is a short stick D mid. Providence loses Joseph Forcelli, a midi. Carter Smith, a D. Queens, Chase Black, a midi. Parrish Edel, a D. Andrew Graham, faceoff / midi. Lachlan Korn, a midi to UIndy. Alan Miller, a D. Brendan Nace, a midi. Joshua Polk, a D. Ryan Quinnipiac losing Trevor Douglas, a midi. Richmond losing Samson X, an attackman. Michael Fagan, a midi. Aiden Fairchild, a D. And Kieran Laurie, a midi. Robert Morris, Jackson Ford, a midi. Matthew Pereira, an attackman. Rutgers, Connor McDonough, an attackman. Patrick Palmer, a midi. Austin Winship, an attackman. Sacred Heart, Caven Wood, an attackman. St. Joe's, Nick Floyd, a goalie to Lenore Rhine. Sienna's losing Brian Mack, a D. St. Bonaventure, Grant Gunichi, going face-off guy to Christopher Newport. St. John's, Trevor Botstini, a midi. Michael Efron, a D. Trent Lukovic, an attackman of Salisbury. Joshua Pelusi, a D. Richie Reed, a midi. Stony Brook, Will Danowski, an attackman. Jack Doherty, a midi. Jesse Corser James, a D to Chatham. Trevor Galango, a D. Sam Gotham, an attackman. CJ Harris, a midi. Tristan LeBlanc, a midi. Jameson McLachlan, a goalie. Walker Popko, an attackman / midi. Syracuse, Jordan Vincent, LSM. Tommy Drago, LSM. What a name. Barrett White, midi. Townsend, Jonathan Bender, midi. Nicholas Hallman, midi. Dylan McDougall, attackman. UAlbany, Chris Crapanzo, midi. John Prizzi, midi. Jack Van Valkenburg, goalie. UMBC, Brendan Kennedy, attackman. Matt Marino, midi. Ben Stefanos, D. Colby Weischer, a midi. UMass, Caleb Hammett, face-off guy. Is that Drip King?
I have no idea.
Might
you
be.
Lost me about halfway through.
And check.
I was like, this is a lot of names.
Check if Caleb Hammett is Drip King. Owen Queen, a D guy. UMass Lowell, Alexander Chairs, D. Andrew Marks, midi. Ryan Quinlan, LSM / D to Western New England. Curtis Red, midi. Luke Renaud, goalie to Bucknell.
Yeah, it's
and Kari Sears, an attackman. That is him. That's what I thought. Vermont, Carson Boyle, attackman, midi. Hayden Furling, a midi. Jason Hunter, attackman. VMI, Garrett Krusel, LSM. Nash Perry, a midi to Anderson. Wagner, Thomas Egan, D. Max Forsara, attackman. Nick Martini, attackman. Matthew Niznik, attackman / midi. Rodolfo Zarat, a goalie. And that concludes the update on the tracker. Now, from now on, we can just go to outgoing and go to anybody who is not yet listed where they're going and just kind of just run through any of the new ones that have popped up.
Isn't the portal closed?
As far as going in. But as far as like deciding where you want to go, it's still pretty open. I'm pretty sure you can decide up until the school year starts.
That man just read the whole phone book of lacrosse players in college.
Pretty much. Like everybody and their mom in the transfer portal this
Stupid. But anywho, now that we just added a half hour of name listing, I think we'll lob Inside Lacrosse a solid moving forward. We'll link it in the description.
But like I said, it won't be a half hour moving forward. The first one's always really long because you got to get everybody caught up and let them know exactly where everybody is. Moving forward, it's really only solidifying where these names are now going. And if nobody has, decided to go somewhere within that week, we just won't touch on it. So it's okay, but we will still do that solid to Inside Lacrosse and drop it in the.
I was
in
just
the
also
description.
saying it because
It just won't be as long.
StreamYard only lets me auto-generate clips to see if they're good or not with 2 hours or less. There goes that.
Hey, nah, if you would have just closed out the pod right now instead of talking about Inside, it could have happened.
Flips table. Make sure you guys are following us across the board at OTB LaxPod. Follow Deej on Twitter at STS_NextGreat. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Subscribe to the podcast feed, Apple, Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating and review. Subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia and Outside the Box podcast YouTube channels, youtube.com/@Underground Sports Philadelphia and youtube.com/@OTB LaxPod. Check out Shootout For Soldiers, linked in the description. Get your merch from our awesome merch partners at PHI Apparel Company, phiapparel.co. Use code Underground for 10% off your merch order. It's been going across the ticker the entire time, so definitely check them out and get your OTB merch. And this has been another edition of the award-nominated, honorably mentioned, number 9 NCAA ranked, and of course viewable on YouTube, Outside the Box podcast, the official lacrosse podcast on the Underground Sports Philadelphia Podcast Network. For Deej, I'm KB. We will see you guys next week as we gear up for Minnesota. Cue the Joe Biden clip. But until then, we're getting the heck up out of here, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Peace.